So I was lurking around on the internet the other day and I came across a forum post asking about e-readers. So there are YouTube channels dedicated solely to e-readers, so I'm not going to do a full in-depth review on the device I use, which is the Kobo Clara HD. But I am going to cover a few reasons why I chose it and why I believe it's a bit more private than comparable devices made by other manufacturers. And then before we begin, if you only came here for the privacy section regarding this e-reader, I will have the timestamp down below in the play bar so you can skip ahead if you like. So before I talk about the device itself, I first want to cover a couple of questions that I think will show up in the comments on this video. The first one being, just use an app on your phone. So yes, this is true, but for me personally, I like using a device that is fully distraction-free. E-readers happen to be pretty feature-less when it comes to what you can do on them. Most of them will have a store on there where you can buy books, they'll have a web browser that looks like it's from 1996, and they'll have a great interface for reading books. I also like to read before bed, and I have my phone charging in a separate room, so it forces me to get out of bed when my alarm goes off, instead of just sitting there mindlessly scrolling on my phone. So by having a separate device that I can read books on, I can just read however much I want, set it aside, and then go to sleep. And if you ever spend any amount of time reading on your phone, your eyes start to get tired or strained. Most e-readers have something called an e-ink display. These displays are referred to as reflective displays. In an LCD or emissive display, light from a backlight is projected through the display towards your eyes. But with an e-ink display, no backlight is used. Ambient light from the environment is reflected from the surface of the display back to your eyes. So they say that because of this, it causes much less eye fatigue, and this is something I completely agree with. It makes for a much nicer reading experience. So because the e-ink display doesn't use any power when you're reading a static page, only when you're changing pages, this makes it so the e-reader has an extremely long battery life. So now moving on to the main reasons why I went specifically with a Kobo Clara HD. The first is the price. So the Kobo Clara HD is comparable to the Kindle Paperwhite, and that's currently going for $159.99 for the ad-free version on Amazon. In case you aren't familiar with it, by default, Amazon puts ads on the lock screen of their e-readers, which I think is kind of crappy, and they charge you $20 to remove them. So right off the bat, you're saving $40 if you buy it brand new. And I actually bought it used on Amazon, and I got it for $79.99, so I really couldn't pass up that deal. So the second reason is that this model supports night mode. So as I mentioned, the e-ink displays don't have a backlight by default. So if you want to read in the dark, you're unable to unless they have a backlight. So the Kobo Clara HD has a backlight built in that also supports night mode. Night mode is what makes your screen look orange by removing the blues, which they say strain your eyes and can also cause you not to sleep as well. So because I like to read before I go to sleep, this was a must-have feature for me. So now the last reason is privacy. And so while this device isn't built for privacy, it's not an open source OS, there's a few things you can do to it that I think make it a lot more private than a comparable device. So most e-readers require you to create an account and sign into the device, and the Kobo is no different. So while you could just use a burner email address and accomplish the same thing, the Kobo has one additional option that you can't accomplish on the Kindle. So I don't really know if this is an option or more so a bug, but with the Kobo, you can follow 7 steps that I found on Reddit, which I will link below, that let you bypass the account creation. So essentially you're just modifying the device database and inserting a user ID with a blank user key into it so that the device thinks a user account is present. So what this lets you do is get into the device without actually signing in with an account. You can start adding books to it and start reading. So since we bypass the account creation, you don't get any of the benefits of creating an online account, such as syncing your place in a book. But since I was going for privacy, I don't mind giving up these features. I've also successfully completed multiple device updates after using this method, so it doesn't cause any issues with that. You can always download the latest software. And then lastly, I always make sure the device Wi-Fi is off. We don't have an account signed in, Wi-Fi is turned off, we just have an offline device that lets us read some books. So if you're looking for an e-reader that works well, is affordable, and doesn't require an account to sign in, I think the Kobo Clara HD is a decent option.